Rite of Passage, the podcast with Giabra Martin.
You're like,
I'm just gonna hit
so-
record. Yeah, keep going, keep going.
sure. And sometimes when you're starting to write, is I try to get my one of the multitasking things, trying to get my visual video screen here looking
Right,
okay. But one of the hardest things about being an indie author, I would say, is when you're trying to have like a real job at the same time, right?
right.
And you have your pesky family members wanting your time as well, and other just life commitments. Sometimes you find yourself laying in bed, like me, I write a lot on my phone.
Mhm.
I haven't written on my laptop in a long time now. It's all on like the Word app on the phone. This is such a, I don't know, it seems like such a bare bones, just get the text onto something, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
there's nothing fancy about it, but I'm just like in bed at the end of the day, like typing. I'm like, well, that was 3 words. I think that counts for tonight. I'm gonna
Counts for
go
some
to sleep.
writing. Oh.
Yes.
Hey, let me ask you, okay, so I've never used the word thing on the phone. Do you do like a voice to text? Because honestly, I don't know if I got like fat thumbs or something, but for the life of me, I
Uh,
cannot type on my phone. It just comes out like total nonsense.
it's basically texting, but you're just writing. And
Right.
so I don't for it's weird. For like writing, actually like writing content, I usually never do the voice to text thing. I'll record notes for myself, but
Yeah.
it's usually for me, I have not been able to do like a voice dictation where it's like writing fiction or something creative. It's very
Mhm.
difficult for me to just not be like actually be able to write, whether it's typing on a regular keyboard or just with the old thumbs.
Yeah.
For some reason, just sort of like if you just sat me down and be like, okay, John, just describe to me like a paragraph of what's happening in your story. I'd be like, do you have several hours? Because it's weird for my brain to switch into that mode.
Right.
So, but I will say it did take some getting used to. And one of the reasons why I switched to just, it's not really like an exclusive choice. I didn't declare this is how I'm going to write from now on, but
Yeah.
it was mainly writing on the mobile device was mainly out of necessity. And I kind of just got used to it because of the sometimes lack of time. And it just
Right.
kind of becomes easier after a while.
Yeah, I'm sure you like get used to it, right?
Very much so, very much so. Although I do have to resist the urge to adding an emoji in a very tense scene.
Right.
Someone's just, bearing it all, I don't even mean just, spilling their guts, and then like a tongue wagging emoji happens, or like a dog or something, and it's just
Right.
takes you out of the scene a little
Well,
bit.
like honestly, the emojis, maybe you could use that as like stage notes, right? Because like there's a certain, because sometimes I'm trying to figure out like how a character is expressing a certain thing. Like I know what they say and I can picture them saying it, but I'm like, how do you put that into words that, that's like
Yeah.
a subtle smile and they're trying to communicate more with their eyes than verbally or something. And sometimes an emoji might be like the goofy thing that like almost like yeah, stage notes or something, like
Hey, you know what, man? Whatever works, because I've done this kind of thing before where you're into your manuscript, and I don't try to do this often, but sometimes I'll just write action scene, come back later. You know what I mean? So like write, just write this intense, detailed, you know, and very involved scene. Get to that later. Who knows how many words or pages it's going to be?
right. I should do something like that because this happens to me all the time. I'll be driving, you get the music going, and you're vibing, you got ideas, and then you sit down
Mhm.
at your desk and you just draw a blank. You're like, what the hell
Oh
was that
yeah,
thing I had so vividly a minute ago? And then it's just like there's nothing there. And it's like you
yeah.
almost need to just immediately get them on paper or get them in writing somewhere, right?
Yeah, that's why it's very important to like I will do the voice notes thing, and they aren't really meant for other people to hear. So if anyone were to ever like listen to the audio recordings I make for myself, I would sound like a crazy person because it's a lot of rambling, and it's a lot of empty space, like dead air for a while as I'm just
Right.
thinking about what I want to hear or say. So it would probably be an interesting, odd experience, and I'd be committed somewhere. I'd just be locked up away from society, which is
Oh
maybe for the
yeah.
best.
Like this man needs to be in a straitjacket. Yeah. No,
Yes.
I did the voice to text thing once, and it was like I felt that compulsion to like hit pause when I was, you know what I mean? Because like you're thinking things out, and you're like, okay, we should pause it right here, think it out, and then hit record again, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
yours is just like you just let it roll, and
Just stream of consciousness, and it would probably
right.
be very frustrating because I will, my wife will say this as well. I will kind of over explain things as I'm talking,
Hmm.
and I'm trying not to do that here now. And so when it's just me, unhinged, unfiltered, unsupervised, it's a lot of dragging on. And I can just imagine, I don't even really listen to these for myself. I don't really listen to them. I don't go back and listen to them. It's a lot of,
Hmm.
I think a lot of it just saying it out loud somehow kind of helps you remember. Or like I've heard like actors
Hmm.
and things say they just if they speak, their lines or something, it helps them remember it. Whereas just reading
Right.
it, it's difficult to commit it to their memories. So I guess there's something like that, but it is good just to kind of just verbalize, even though it comes out and like just sort of I just kind of barf out information, but it gets out there. That's a very
It's
disgusting
actually
way of putting it, but
a good idea. This is something I'm learning the hard way, right? Like I'll write something and it'll be beautiful on paper, and then when I go to make the audiobook, it isn't spoken the same way it's read. So like that is one
yeah,
thing about saying it out loud, and you're like, no, that doesn't. It's clunky. It doesn't flow right. Doesn't sound natural. But like I
yeah.
sometimes get that wrong because I'm not doing the speaking. Because people for a long time people would read out loud even when they were reading in private. That
Hmm.
was just the thing people did is like you're reading it and speaking it at the same time and bringing it to
Yeah.
life. Um, yeah, you probably are onto something here, honestly.
Well, I have a friend who advised, an author friend who advised, what she does is after she finishes a manuscript, she'll read it out loud to herself.
Hmm.
And it's just another wave of edits. And, the typos, the edits, the error goblins, they're undefeated. You'll always find one. Like, I'm
Right.
sure that there's, name whatever the biggest author you can think of. I'm sure even they go to the like a bookstore, find their book, and they turn to a page. There's a typo. I don't know how it got missed, but here it is in the store. You know what I mean? So
Oh
so
yeah.
yeah,
No,
it
they're
never
so
stops.
hard. They're so hard to get out of there. But yeah, speaking it out loud actually somehow can like bring those errors to life a little bit or bring them to the surface, right? Because part of
Yeah.
it when you edit your own book, you like know what's in there and your eyes seems like they skip over things.
Yes.
Like it's very hard to read your stuff as a reader or step back from it or something, right? Like I've never been
Yeah.
able to like, do that. Yeah.
Yeah. As many times as I reread on like a manuscript that I write or
Yeah.
I've written, I like you do get so familiar with it. You just naturally get kind of like distracted or just get kind of drowsy. And you're like,
Hmm.
wow, my own work is putting me to sleep. I'm very confident in my story here. And that's also, and the editing process and the rereading, it takes, it's very time consuming. It's a huge time
Oh yeah.
suck. So
Oh yeah.
a lot of the times I feel like I'm not reading just leisurely, just to read because it's something I
Hmm.
enjoy. I feel like I'm not doing that enough because I'm doing enough reading of my own, and I feel kind of weird. And like someone were to ask me, like, "Hey, what are you reading? What have you read lately?" I'm like, my own stuff, and I don't want
My
to
own
sound
stuff
like
a dozen times. Yeah.
oh, because my stuff is just the greatest. I'm like, no, it's because I'm trying to find if I repeated a word in two paragraphs or something so
Right.
trivial, no one else is going to notice, but it'll bother, you're the one who wrote it, so it's going to bother you.
Oh. I have
So,
noticed there's a lot of indie authors who are like avid readers. I mean, they'll read a new book every couple days, and God, I cannot figure out the schedule to save my life. Right between like raising a kid, working, trying to write,
mhm,
edit my own work, I'm like the whole leisure reading thing for me is like almost out the window. It was like,
yeah.
yeah,
And it's even, yeah, man, I totally relate to that and agree with that because sometimes I'll be like, just open the Kindle app on your phone, whatever. Uh, just spend 10 minutes reading anything.
yeah,
And my brain is like, nope, I don't want to do that. And yeah, man. So I'm a notoriously slow reader as it is. And
me too. Yeah.
so I almost wanted to call myself the writer who doesn't read because it's kind of what it came down to. I'm like, should I? I don't know how this makes me feel, but this is where audiobooks come into
Mm,
play. If you're in the car a lot like I am, you are just pounding, you just powering through them, and you just knocking them out. And so I have listened to books that I would have never have gotten around to. So
right.
I wanted to ask you about your audiobook process. Now, this is
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that's that's a goal of mine was
Mm,
to begin the audiobook version of the book one of my series. So
nice.
when you have done your audiobooks, do you do the recording yourself? Do you solicit someone to do it for you, like a voiceover actor? What is the process there?
I got to make a video on this coming up because there's so much stuff I've learned the hard way that I
Hmm.
want to share with other authors and maybe spare them a bit of the headache that I, had to endure kind of thing. So,
Hmm.
the condensed long version of the whole
Yeah.
process. And so, like, my first two books, went with like a hybrid publisher, and then afterward, they're like, okay, let's connect you with Audiobook Network, and we can, start working on the audiobook. And I got quotes that were like $4,000 or $5,000, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, not doing that. So I thought, I'm like, okay, audiobook is off the table until the book is very successful, and then
Hmm.
it'll make sense. There's an audience, there's money coming in. Now we're going to invest in the audiobook as another layer. So then I tried to do my own audiobooks, and I have a nice microphone, all this stuff. I didn't realize how difficult it is. I mean, there's a whole layer that's like the acting, the editing.
Yeah.
These audiobook companies are very, very picky, right? Like the audio, it can never get too high or too low. It's got to like, there's a whole lot of editing to keep it within a certain range, keep it within a certain quality. They're very, very picky. So like my audiobook wasn't good that I did myself, and then it kept getting rejected, and I just like got so frustrated. And then
Mm.
I learned about ACX, which is basically like
Okay.
a network of narrators and authors, and there's a bunch of different options, right? So like, and this an advantage I had. A lot of my stuff were like novellas, short stories, novelettes. So I was able to find very, very talented narrators who would do it for free. And then the deal was we're going to split the royalties from here on out. So like it was like a 40% comes to us. So like if a book is $1, 40 cents comes to us, and we split that 20 cents and 20 cents. Um, and these narrators, I mean, I have found tremendous talent.
Okay.
And like, one of them, I was like, and when I wrote it, it was like, it's got to be an English narrator from,
Hmm.
somewhere in the UK. I found a guy who was awesome, brought these characters to life. I mean, he did all the acting. I mean, the inflection. I mean, I didn't realize how many skills go into it.
Yeah.
It's a totally different animal than just, being an author or something. But I was able to get the books out there, within a couple months, and it didn't cost me anything.
Okay. Very nice.
Right. So I'm like, okay. And I guess what's so sad to me is like I went several years without ever hearing about ACX, didn't even knowing,
Hmm.
didn't had no idea this was an option. I will say I have two longer novels, and I've not been able to find a good narrator. And it's because like the time commitment for that narrator is going to be like the audiobook will probably be 12, 13, 14 hours long.
Yeah.
So you got to imagine the actual recording has got to be probably 5 times greater than that. And to do something like that, you got to pay the people in advance. Like they're not going to be like, oh, we'll split future money. It's like, no, I
Hmm.
need something today because this is going to take me a lot of work.
Yeah.
So that's the
Yeah.
probably longer than you need. But yeah, ACX is a good way to
Okay.
go. Yeah.
That's probably something I will pursue in the future, but I will admit there's part of me that wants to. Well, I kind of decided for the first book, I think it'd be the only book I would try for myself. It's like I kind of want to
Mhm.
see if I could do it myself. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't, and part of me is like, why do you want to do that? I don't really do voices or anything. I think it's just more just a challenge. Can I do this? And
Mm,
and then when it comes to like the female character, just a female point of view series of chapters in the book, luckily
right.
my wife has said like she can do that. I'm like, thank you, because me doing the girl voice would sound ridiculous. So uh it's
That's always the thing, right? You're like, okay, should we act out, like the female voice, or should
Mhm.
we just say like, oh, it's my voice, but this is the female character? And then
Yeah.
it gets weird, and I'm like, for me, when an audiobook comes out unnatural, like the weird voices, they're trying too hard. It's like
Hmm.
almost more distracting than anything else. And I'm like, God, like, how do you want to navigate that? And the really big books, the really good ones, like they'll have multiple narrators, right? You'll have a female
Mhm.
narrator doing the female role, you know what I mean? And then it's
Yeah.
not distracting or anything like that. Just, I don't know. And it's a tricky balance, right? And it's not
Yeah.
something that I've had to think about at all before getting into this audiobook thing.
Yeah. Seriously. It's like not only do like, well, at least for me, not only would I worry about me just sounding good in general, then
Mhm.
there's me doing like another just like a cast of characters who all have to sound distinct and different and
Right?
with the proper inflections.
Yes.
So I could just sound ridiculous. And then there's the audio quality. The audio quality could just be just not very good. Like you said, it has to be like very fine tuned and balanced. And
Right.
another thing is in your I don't know if what kind of recording situation or setup you got, but like I know in my house, I'm just trying to locate places, and I've done like podcasting stuff before, so I'm like,
Yeah.
I have somewhat of an experience with audio things like that, but because of that, I'm like very selective and picky about where I want to record, and I know that if I want to record anything, at least myself, just me, just with a mic, just hitting record. I'm probably choosing a room in my house where I think I will have the best sound, and it's
Hmm.
probably going to be like a closet or something,
Right.
and not a lot of air ventilation in some of these closets. So, and if I start it this year soon, it's probably going to be, and I live in Texas, so it's going to be very warm in the summer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I just going to be sweating it out in a hot box trying to record, say these lines and stuff? I come out of a
Right.
recording session just drenched in sweat. I don't know. It could be like a sauna or something. I could just make an experience out of it or something.
Just
But
like faint in the middle of your audiobook. And
yeah, I might have to just a little disclaimer, like faint a few times during the recording of this.
know,
Just go with it. The editing will cover it up,
you
Just
know, none of my narrators have had trouble getting the books approved, but I was pulling my hair out. So like there's a scenario where like, okay, if you go to record your own audiobook and you don't do your research ahead of time, pull up a bunch of YouTube videos,
mhm.
you record the entire thing and then find out that the initial settings were incorrect and you cannot make
uh,
it compliant. You know what I mean? So it's like and these places like Audible and they have a whole list of like, okay, here's the settings we require, and I forget what they all are. I mean, like Hertz and I mean a bunch of stuff
yeah,
that's not my general wheelhouse.
yeah.
Um, but I will say, like when you listen to an audiobook and it is read by the author, there is something that is cool about that. But I wonder if it's more important for nonfiction than for fiction, right? Like,
Well, kind of depends. Like, I've been recently listening to the Dexter series,
nice.
the audiobooks. Big fan of like the TV show and
Yeah,
everything. And
yeah,
I finally, a friend of mine recommended, hey, why don't you listen to the books? And I have a copy of the first book on my bookshelf right now. And because
yeah.
I'm a horrible reader, I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'll ever get around to that thing, but finally just wised up and just say, hey, just go for the audiobooks. And I will say, at least the versions I'm listening to are read by the author, Jeff Lindsay. And it's
Nice.
also very interesting because just kind of on a weird aside, he sounds eerily similar to Michael C. Hall, the actor who plays Dexter on the show. It's just
Nice.
very interesting. It's an interesting
Huh.
listening experience. And I'm like, was he part of the casting? And he like, get a guy who sounds like me. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
want.
Well, one thing you could do that might be interesting, and like if you ever start like a YouTube channel, you may or may not have one already, or like, if you got different social media, I mean, you could record like the first chapter as a sample and then have the image be like, the book cover kind of thing, and
Mm-hmm.
put that out there as a sample and like see how it sounds, see how people
That's
respond
a
to
good
it.
idea.
There's something just like before you endeavor upon the full project, do like a smaller piece. And I mean,
That's
along the
a
way, it could help sell a couple books, and that might be a cool thing.
that's a really good idea, actually. That's a very smart to not just go full on into this huge project and then you just come out with it and like it doesn't sound very good and
Yeah.
you never really go into anything, especially as an indie, expecting to yield anything. If it does well, fantastic. If it doesn't, I was going to release something anyway, so you know what I mean.
Right.
So uh I think most of us aren't specifically driven by whatever we define as success. So I think we just have this weird drive in all of us just to put out stuff. We just like to put out
Right.
stuff. And on it's easy to get caught up in checking on sales like every 2 seconds. So I'm like, did it
Right.
update? Did it update? And I think this is something I've been recently considering or just thinking about. It's like I just enjoy putting out things.
Mm.
So it would be great if this sold like gangbusters. But even if it doesn't, if I get like zero goose egg for the, let's say for the rest of the year, let's just say it's horrible. Let's
Yeah.
go for
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
for broke. I'm like, let's say I get nothing for the rest of the year. Uh, would I still put out stuff? I'm like, yeah, I probably would. So I'm just, I'm
That
like,
might
nothing's
be
stopping me. Nobody's saying like, John, please stop. You know what I mean?
that
So,
might be the winning attitude though, because like I'm on this whole like manifestation thing and I'm all woo woo and all this, but I feel like
mhm,
okay, like in a relationship, right? When you're like desperate for love or you're jealous, all these different things. I mean, there's no faster way to push somebody else away. But I
mhm.
feel like life is kind of like that in general, right? Like, you're author, you're writing, you're like this desperate energy that like I need sales, I'm leaning on this, like please
Yeah,
buy my book. Nothing turns off the world quicker and pushes your book further
yeah,
away from people. But that whole like, hey, I just love making this stuff. Enjoy it, read it, don't read it. Like it's all good. I'm gonna keep making it. I just love what I'm doing. I'm having a good time.
yeah.
Something about that is like magnetic. You know what I
And
mean?
I've noticed in any creative field, and what's interesting, it's like I would imagine it's probably the case with many other authors. It's like the type of interest, whether we pursue it as a full career or just a hobby, but the thing we enjoy doing is probably the most objective and competitive thing you could enter into. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of instant gratification. You know what I mean? Because you're just putting in sometimes years of your life into one project
Oh yeah.
potentially, and you release it, and then it's like, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you, you also have to be a marketing major. You should
Oh
have
yeah.
studied marketing in college. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a whole other thing. It's like most of being an author is learning how to market, and it's really interesting to me because marketing is this whole other field that people spend years studying. We have
Right.
to do it on the fly because we just like, oh wait, what? So yeah, so it's a huge time commitment, huge time suck, and it can get very easy to get bogged down into like the depressing parts of that.
Right.
However, I think because we do just simply enjoy doing it, that's why we're going to continue on doing it. But it's also nice just to, talk to other authors and just see, but I
Yeah.
do agree. Sometimes you do see anybody in any type of creative field, they're saying like, oh, please buy my thing. Please look at my thing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, I get it. I feel the same way, but I would rather just try to showcase what's good about the story. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I don't want to advertise that I'm getting no sales. You know what I mean?
Right.
If
I
you're
see that.
indie, people could probably assume that anyway. You know?
Well, no, I see that on threads though. You see like people post their sales on threads and you see these ultra successful authors who are like,
Mhm.
I'm a six-figure author, and like everyone's like, holy shit, how'd you do that? And then
Oh,
you see
yeah,
these authors like, woo, I haven't sold a book in the entire month of April. And it's either like people who are way ahead of you or people who are totally falling apart. But either way, like it's kind of better for your own journey to just avoid it altogether. Like it's
yeah,
got nothing to do with you and it ain't helping you to look at it. You know what I mean?
right,
Um, I will say, we wear a lot of different hats.
yeah.
I was thinking about, oh, I had something a second ago, but totally forgot what the hell it was. But I don't know, you got a lot of ideas flowing for me here. So well, we should probably dig into your book because honestly, I
Oh,
have a
yeah.
feeling you and I could chat about all sorts of things for
Mm,
a good while here, and we might get there, but
yeah,
let's
yeah.
talk about Unsecret Identity.
Oh, yeah. This is one of these stories that I think most authors have some germ of an idea of or some story that kind of lives with them and is going to bother them until you put it out. And this is what it was for me. This particular idea started out when I was like very, very young, and it wasn't anything that resembles what it came out to now,
Mm,
but it's one of these just because I grew up, I still love to draw. I provide it's mainly cheap labor, but I provide all of the art for all of my books. I do the graphic and the interior illustration as
Nice.
well. And I am a designer as like my real job. So it's fun
Cool.
for me. I kind of get to use all of this creative stuff into one output, one outlet. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but when I was a kid, I thought, oh, I'm going to draw comic books when I grow up. And then I found out drawing comic books is really hard. And that's I don't know if I'm there. And but I still like to, come up with characters and stuff. And the idea sort of progressed, and I would leave it alone for a long time. And finally, I had a friend just kind of tell me, hey, you should write a book. And I'm like, I'll just kind of go for it.
Yeah.
And so it resulted in a story that is ultimately about a kid who finds out he has a miraculous natural gift of flight. He doesn't understand why he can fly, and he lives
Hmm.
in a city with that already has superheroes. And these superheroes, I think some of them are more like Iron Man, some of them just have gadgets and stuff. No one has like powers or anything,
Yeah. Okay.
but they're commonplace. And this kid, he has this real natural gift of flight. He doesn't really know what to do with it. And he also has a weakness he does not understand, which is if he stays grounded or he just is not afloat for too long,
Hmm.
his body will experience great intense pain that he doesn't understand. He
Hmm.
likens it as gravity itself is punishing him for just so it's he doesn't understand what it is. So he kind of always has to be floating, buoying, if you will, but or
Yeah.
flying.
Yeah.
And so he kind of quickly determines that having a secret identity is kind of out the window because he has to constantly just fly around or he'll just feel pain. So he, along with a friend, determines that the best way to hide in plain sight is to hide in plain flight. Get it? Anyway,
There you
so
go.
he becomes a maskless superhero because he decides that he doesn't have a secret identity, so having a mask is pointless. But he does let the world think that he flies with the use of a decoy anti-grav backpack, and he joins the
Hmm.
superhero team as sort of like a fake superhero. That's his only way he can hide out in public because the city loves superheroes. So he's
Hmm.
like, okay, cool, I'll just be a superhero. That way I
Yeah.
can fly around and everyone's cool with it. And then he learns that he actually has to do superhero things and fight crime, and it's not really what he signed up for. And in that there's a lot of family drama, family secrets that come out to light, and he has to
Hmm.
face a lot of demons from his past and his family's past. And there's a killer robot that he has to fight. So, it's something little something for everybody there.
I like that.
And at the core of it, I wanted to have this character who has like this coolest thing that's ever happened in the history of the planet. But
Hmm.
because he lives in a world with so many fantastic things, he doesn't think he's the coolest thing ever. In fact, he wants to hide it from everybody at first and
Hmm.
still does. So it was sort of like this weird um, angle or this weird twist that I wanted to show that this kid has a talent, but he's surrounded by talent, so he doesn't feel like he has any talent. It's sort of like it's a kind of a metaphor. It's kind of just fun. It's also clean fiction, which no over the top violence, no intimate encounters, no
Nothing
swears or anything like
spicy.
that. So and so I and so no really nothing too crazy or anything like that. I wanted something that literally anyone can read. The intended audience is young adult because it is more about, the kids, but I
Yeah.
wanted it to be something that you can read maybe as a family and not be embarrassed when some like steamy part comes along or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's plenty of that. There is no shortage of spice, so
Oh, it's
I'm
yeah,
not
that's
worried
all
about
over.
that.
No. Hey, let me stop you a minute because you got all my wheels turning, man. So
Okay.
firstly, big picture thing or just, personal thing. I'm trying to take back philosophy. Like
Okay.
I think, okay, so philosophy in the ancient Greek was the Philia Sophia. And Sophia
Hmm.
was like this goddess, and it meant the love of wisdom. And somewhere along the way, we conflated wisdom or we conflated intelligence with wisdom.
Hmm.
And we're all logic and reason and no intuition. But your story, everything you're describing is why authors need to take back philosophy. So, like, I can tell you're a guy who probably has a very interesting dream life, very intuitive, right
Hmm.
from the gut. Your story, is not that fundamentally different from something like Jonah and the Whale, where it's like you got a thing, there's a thing you're supposed to do, you have a destiny, you have a gift, you have a skill, and you avoid it, and life punishes the hell out of you for it and redirects
Yes. Yeah.
you because you cannot escape from what you are and are supposed to be. So,
Hmm.
like, this character has this extraordinary, unique thing, kind of denies it, gets punished for not flying, doesn't
Hmm.
think they're extraordinary, but then, like, really everything comes together when this person embraces what they were always meant to be.
Yeah, very much so.
That's why authors need to take back philosophy, damn it.
Yeah, and hey, with the name of the character, there's a lot of Greek mythology there.
Yeah,
There's,
Icarus, Eric
yeah,
Icarus.
Eric Icarus, and there's a
Uh,
lot of. You would think I'd be like some Greek myth junkie, like I know everything in the ins and outs of it, but there's a lot I don't know. But and there's a lot of that. It's a lot of those themes do come up. A lot of different names will pop up, and there's a reason for that.
hmm,
But yeah, I do agree with a lot with what you're saying, and it is um, really interesting to also consider. Just what's funny, I didn't lean into the psychological aspect of the story because when I first
hmm.
started writing it, I'm like, I'm going to write a one and done. And how many
Okay.
authors have done this where they start writing a story and they're like, oh no, this is a series. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're like, oh God, we got unfinished business, or there's
Yeah,
unanswered questions. There's more. Like, what happens after? Yeah, turns
there's
into
a
it evolves,
there's
evolves.
something that I say to myself a lot. I catch myself saying to myself where I'm writing something, I'm thinking, okay, this is a cool project, whatever. This will be quick. And then I'll hear this voice in my head saying, "You're not going to like me very much." It's, it's just like this could be like a whole big thing, and I'm like, "No, I don't like this, and I know I'm gonna carve out the little time I have already to just have this grandiose, ambitious project or something." So, but
Right.
yeah,
Let
and
me
it
tell you.
happened. That's what happened with this story too.
So back in the day, I took just for fun, like elective courses in college. I took some like criminal justice, like crime
Mhm.
scene analysis, criminal psychology. I ate it up. I loved it.
Yeah.
One of these big premises of like crime scene analysis is that like if an extreme personality spends too much time in a room, the room is going to reflect that personality. So
Hmm.
like for example, like there was like some murder and they're looking around, they're trying to find evidence. They found that a specific picture was moved. And they looked at that picture and then realized that like it was very, very personal to this person who did it. Or like, if a criminal is very organized or disorganized, whatever it may be, but and this is a long way of getting to my point here. I find, and I can tell for sure, I think you're going to agree with this, that like whatever book you're writing is a reflection of your own consciousness. Like you're talking about, like, oh, I never really meant to write, and I never really meant to do this, and but I couldn't escape it. Like, you ever have a story that if you don't put it on paper, it's gonna punish you, and then your character is
Yeah.
in the exact same position, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
damn, God, I don't know. We have such weird inner lives that our stories run parallel with our stream of
Yeah.
consciousness in a given season.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so. And, what's a different skill set I think authors have to learn is when you're talking to, let's say it's something you constantly think about, like your story, whatever you're thinking about, whatever project you happen to have at the time. These things are kind of existing in your mind in some
Mm,
way, right? And you're thinking like, oh, when I have time, I really need to work on this chapter, whatever it may be.
right.
And so when you have someone, let's say it's a family member, it's a friend, it's some stranger, and they have they actually have, hey, tell me about your book, and now you have
Mm,
to funnel and filter and condense all this crazy. This is why it's tough for a lot of authors to write blurbs and a synopsis for your story because I'm like,
for sure.
how do I break? That's a whole other humbling experience. So, and like, how
Something
do
you
I
spent
make
a
this to
year. Yeah.
the elevator pitch, right?
Right. You spend a relentless year of like obsessing on a story and solving every single little puzzle. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, let's summarize it in one paragraph that other people can digest. And you're like, all you have is raw insanity. And you're like, look, it took everything in my willpower to boil it down into this book
Yeah.
that, is
And
told in order. So,
yeah, and just to like, and you're like, it could be a podcast interview like this, or it could
Yeah.
be just in your daily life or something. And you're like, this person, I don't, you kind of feel like you're on the spot. Like, I don't want to let them down. I don't want to let me down. And they're just like, okay, cool, man. Well, good luck with all that. You know what I mean? It's like they can just move
Yeah.
on. You're stuck with I'm like, it's like as I'm talking, you know, I was talking just now, I'm like, I'm talking too long. I'm talking too long. Get to the
No, no,
point,
no.
you know. And because I think we beat ourselves up a lot by doing that because there is the business side of it. There is like
Hmm.
it may not be your specific goal, but it would be nice to make sales, right? I think no one's gonna like say no to a
Yeah.
sale, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's and there is the whole business aspect, and part of that is being able to pitch it, present it,
Right.
and it's very difficult. Like I used to think I was pretty good at coming up with synopses and blurbs until I tried to write it for myself. Then I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. What am I supposed to do?
It's
You know,
tough. It is really quick. So Zoom is going to kick us out in a minute and 3 seconds here.
okay.
All of John's links are going to be in the description, book links, social media links. So if you're interested in his books, want to learn more about him, connect with him, that just check the description. I will say on the topic of synopsis, like it doesn't matter what you tell people. The key is you bring passion. Because
Mhm.
like so many people are dead inside, they're working jobs they don't like. So like anytime they can be around passion, enthusiasm, someone chasing a dream, someone who's inspired, it
Yeah.
is absolutely magnetic. So like even if your book pitch is terrible, the enthusiasm that you bring about your book pitch is the essential thing that makes it compelling.
Yeah. Totally agree. So, and while we have time, I just want to thank you for having me on. It's very exciting. Always love the
Man,
opportunity to talk a shop, if you will.
oh, we're gonna do this again because I just all I want to do is talk philosophy and just weird stuff.
Yes.
So
Yes.
like, we're gonna bring you back because this has been cool, man.
All right. Love it. So,
John, thank you for being on. Thank you for making this time on a Saturday. And
no problem. Thank you.
yeah, everyone, thank you for watching.
All right.
All right, see you.